Good morning. My name is Len Gillette. I'm the president of the Silicon Valley chapter of AAII. And for some reason, I can't get video to work on my laptop. So I'm doing it on a computer that doesn't have video and have not. There may have been an update from Zoom, but whatever happened, that's where we are. Well, I'd like to welcome you to a meeting. We have a really excellent program today. One note, since we have uh, around 100 people signing up. Uh, Please address your questions to our both speakers on chat, and then we'll pick up those questions and the speakers will answer them as they please in terms of when and where and how that happens. We are recording this program, and the recording will be available in about a week. And I'd also like to welcome uh, because we're doing a joint meeting with the East Michigan AAI chapter and with the San Francisco chapter. So I'd like to welcome all of those from those two chapters. Doing joint meetings is going to become a more common thing, and I think it works out well. Our first speaker is John McCamant. He's the editor of the Medical Technology Stock Letter, and his topic is 2024 top picks in biotech. Just a bit of a disclosure, I only subscribe to two investment newsletters, and one of them is the Medical Technology Stock Letter, which I've used for years for biotechnology investing, and it's helped me in that area. So just full disclosure. John is editor of the Medical Technology Stock Letter. He has more than 35 years experience in biotechnology investing. John is frequently quoted in financial press. Before becoming editor of the Medical Technology Stock Letter, John worked as an equity analyst in investment banking and venture capital in the venture capital industry. So, John, why don't you begin? And I'll have some announcements at the end about coming programs. And I also urge all of you who have an interest in furthering financial education, no matter where you are in the country, because people from all over the country that sign up on Zoom, to volunteer to your local organization and help them out. So anyway, John, you have the forum.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Lynn. It's my pleasure here to speak to the AAII this morning. I believe your group's been in existence for a long time, and I believe my father originally spoke to the group many years, decades ago. Silicon Valley was always one of his original hotspots for investing, and literally, as we believe, is part of what launched BioTech. Nevertheless, I am here to talk to you about finding best-in-class drugs, which we feel is one of the keys to biotechnology investing. We're going to look relatively in-depth at two specific companies, VKTX, Viking, and CLDX, Celdex. Lynn, I'm not sure what your capacity is on the questions, but particularly when we get into the companies a little later, if there are questions during the presentation, I'm more than be good to get those during some of that if that's possible. If not, we'll do everything at the conclusion. So here, let's get started. Our investment newsletter is the Medical Technology Stock Letter, which Lynn had mentioned. We've been publishing, since I think 1983, so we're basically been covering this sector since the Genentech, the original big dog of biotech, came public in that year. We believe the Medical Technology Stock Letter is your best tool for understanding and investing in biotechnology stocks. It's a really complex industry, but yet it's something that is navigatable as far as. So we believe you need to get educated, stay informed, and profit. And we believe BioInvest is your one-stop shop website that answers the majority of your biotech industry questions. Today's presentation, I'm going to provide an overview of the Medical Technology Stock Letter. We're going to talk about the biotech IBB and its potentially breaking out. We will then discuss GLP-1s, which are basically the miracle drugs for weight loss or obesity. and also the other implications in NASH and other things as broad as type 2 diabetes. We're going to focus on two specific companies that we are our top picks for 2024, VKTX and CLDX, and specifically why you need to subscribe to MTSL. Next slide, please. The portfolio is we have a model portfolio. We're trying to take a long-term horizon here in biotech investing. Some of our recommendations will last as long as 5 or 10 years, which interestingly mirrors basically the length of drug development, or it's up to 10 years or even longer sometimes for drug discovery or in the lab to make it all the way to the market. We recommend a mix of tiers in the biotech stocks, tier 1, 2, and 3. Tier 1 are your biggest stocks in market cap. Those are ones with sales in the big bios. We tend to focus more in the tier 2 and tier 3s with the goal of identifying mid-cap to small-cap stocks that will eventually become large-cap stocks. We believe in also a mix of tiers, and then at least 3 or 4 or 5 maybe companies within each tier to create a more basically your own portfolio and manage the risk, particularly with the stage of development. We were up 11.8% year to date. I believe those numbers will be updated next week. Next slide, please. Who is MTSL? It's myself and Jay Silverman. We are dynamic biotech analyst team. We have over 70 years of analytic experience in the space. We provide objective analysis. We do not receive any banking fees from any of our recommendations. Early recommendations have become leading companies and some huge wins for MTSL subscribers. Insight, Pharmacyclics, PCYC was a huge winner. Celgene, DNA, the old Genentech, was another big winner. A medicines company was a nice win in the cardiovascular space, similar to something going on with maybe Aspirion right now. And MYOV was another premium buyout for us. Some of our current names that we like are Madrigal, which we'll discuss briefly, Celldex, Bicycle, and VKTX, which we'll go into more detail. Next slide, please. We start each issue with a BSA, which is a biotech sector analysis. We're going to discuss major industry events, whether they're MTSL stocks or not. For example, in the current issue, which goes out tomorrow, we have a nice discussion of what's going on with Amgen and their obesity drug, and provide some perspective or context where that fits in with some of our recommendations. So we're going to cover all of the events that have happened since the previous issue. But something also more importantly is we're going to take a look forward to what's going to occur over the next 2 to 4 weeks, sometimes over the next couple of months. So some of the things we looked at in this week's issue are ASCO, some other key meetings, and also the American Diabetes Association meeting coming up. So this is a very important time of year in biotech, is we have a lot of huge scientific symposium or meetings coming up, and this can be where we see some of the most interesting data and have some can be major driver of stock prices. So regulatory is one of the key things we look at in the biosector analysis. We're looking at specific key FDA approvals. PDUFA dates are dates where the FDA has to get back to certain companies, and data releases. Mergers and acquisitions. We discussed 2 recent M&As that have occurred, acquisitions that have occurred in the last 2 weeks in the current issue, and also any major deals or partnerships. Both mergers and acquisitions and partnerships can be a significant driver of stock prices within the biotech space. Which themes are hot? We want to be covering or looking at things, what's going on in biotech. Obviously, obesity, which I mentioned above, but things like gene therapy, RNAi, new antibodies. That was specifically would be something would be like Celldex, ADCs, which are antibody drug conjugates. These are basically when they're perfect are magic bullets. These are monoclonal antibodies which have attached to them a killing or a specific killing agent. The monoclonal antibody targets specific cancer cells, attaches, and then releases the killer payload. Technology is growing in popularity, or we're seeing more and more buzz around it. And it was the reason that Pfizer, which I'll show in a slide coming up, paid so much for Seattle Genetics last year. Bispecifics or bispecific antibodies are very interesting. And then instead of one target for an antibody, they have two targets. We find this can be very interesting. And also, like the ADCs, can create more proprietary or blocking intellectual property. In this case, it's very important. Immunotherapy and oncology are areas we're always going to follow very closely. Technicals are important. We have a couple of charts in every issue, and we want to use those for perspective. Charts often tell us a lot. Each issue, we also include clinical trials watch. We urge anybody with any disease or doing any research on any company, go to clinicaltrials.gov. It's free, and you can immediately find all the clinical trials in a specific space. This is a very useful tool. Next slide, please. MTSL company updates. Next slide, please. Go through the clinical trials. Thanks. MTSL company updates. Can be the meat or very important part of every issue. And new objective analysis of the companies in our portfolio universe. We're going to go through clinical, regulatory, partnership, competition, and our financial announcements within the space. So just page down on those next couple of bullets. Thank you. So as I mentioned earlier, I want to analyze the present and predict the future. We're looking ahead as what to expect in both the big and small picture. We've 24 issues a year, so basically every 2 weeks. It's easy to read, or we take a lot of the scientists and we provide it so it's understandable in a layman, even though we can communicate on that so that the physicians, scientists, and industry executives also understand. Next slide, please. MTSL white papers are where we publish in depth on some of the latest or relevant themes of biotech investing. We did one and we thought was very important on mast cells. That's a critical component or implicated within the inflammation cascade. We've looked at areas like hemophilia and NASH. We think these are timely and forward-looking. They can often accompany a key MTSL recommendation, specifically mast cells. We would point you to Celldex or CLDX as their monoclonal antibody. In our opinion, looks like it could be a best-in-class for that space or targeting mast cells. And as we mentioned earlier, it can be read or understood on multiple levels. Next slide, please. MTSL breaking news. This is how we communicate or get out information in between the 24 issues that you're subscribing to. We will send out these via email. Going down to the next bullets, please. So this first one went out in February. So basically, we're looking at barzolvolimab is Barzo or Celldex's lead antibody. It looks like it's trailing or going to be potentially best in class. So when the FDA approved Xolair for food allergies, we saw this as another opportunity for Celldex, which looks like it's going to be a pipeline in the pill. And as I get to some of their upcoming slides, you can see why we're excited about that and why food allergies is just one of many things they may be able to address. And then on the 6th of February, Lilly put out phase 2 MASH data. MASH is basically used interchangeable with NASH. NASH is non-alcoholic hepatitis. MASH is just part of the same group of patients. Put significant stock pressure on Madrigal and also on Viking. But what we really felt was coming is this was in February, is that both of these companies had significant positive catalysts upcoming in March. So we made sure that both of those were strong buys despite potential overreaction to the Lilly data. Particularly the Viking had a huge move on some of the data right after that. So it's very important to get the big picture, and we're doing providing that on a constant basis. Then this other update was put out last August. I think this went out just within like 5 weeks. Lynn might remember more specifically, but we recommend Thorne, which is a very interesting company. It looks like basically the absolute creme de la creme in supplement manufacturing. So on the fringe of med tech, but basically pharmaceutical grade supplements, and that were bought for a significant premium at basically 65% at $10.20 in less than 6 weeks. So that was an excellent recommendation last year, and it was really nice to get that update up to our subscribers. Next slide, please. Okay, as I mentioned on the charts, and so we're going to be putting these in every issue and have some discussion. The XBI is one of probably the most important one for the group of stocks that we track. This already is a week old, but we can see in the bigger picture, we've had a classic double bottom in the space. We've done some back and fill here after a nice, basically January and February. In our opinion, look, we could be poised for another nice move here coming up. Next slide, please. This is the Viking daily chart, and it had that incredible move in February, as you can see. That was after our update when we told the subscribers, even though we'd had a nice move about start to 2004, we really thought they had a significant catalyst upcoming. Basically, since that run almost all the way to 100, you can see another looks like double bottom. Classic back and fill. We have more data, and we'll be discussing that here a little more in the presentation on Viking. But we're going to put these charts in different as another tool for our subscribers and analysis in every issue. Next slide, please. Fundamentals remain strong. Cash is king in biotech, and balance sheets remain solid. These are important that they can fund their own developments, and particularly clinical trials, and take them along to proper inflection points. FDA is working well, specifically improving cell and gene therapies. We've seen these where it's no longer big news. I believe maybe 8 or 9 different cell or gene therapies approved in 2023. Specifically, the FDA is doing much better by working and communicating with the companies, but in the cell and gene therapy space, they're very meticulous on the manufacturing, as these are very complicated and scientific procedures, and they've been doing a very good job of being scrupulous there. FDA recently granted full approval last year to Biogen IDEX Alzheimer's drug, Leqembi, despite it only having modest to good data. In our opinion, that was a very good move by the agency because the drug is shown to be very safe. So they're serving their first purpose, which is to make sure they do no harm. But because was very few drugs available for Alzheimer's, if any, we think this was a very important approval, and it shows the FDA working with industry. And in my personal opinion, I believe the drug will show better efficacy when we get it into earlier stage patients than were actually tested in a clinical trial. And with its excellent safety profile, I think it's going to end up being an efficacious but also a successful drug for Biogen IDEX. We believe the innovation engine or biotechnology drug development is running very high, exemplified by the rapid development of COVID-19 vaccines. The quickest vaccine developed in history was 10 years before COVID-19. COVID-19 was able to cut that down to a year. So we see the vaccine and drug development remaining cutting edge within biotech. And M&A is always a reminder of the strong underlying fundamentals within the industry, but also provides significant profits or premiums to biotech investors. Next slide, please. There's a list of some of the major biotech deals done last year at 70 to 100% premiums. Specifically, one of the biggest ones for us and in our industry was the Pfizer Seattle Genetics. What do you do if you're Pfizer and you just made more money than God, billions upon hundreds of billions of dollars selling COVID vaccines? Well, if you're smart, you go out and buy other technologies. And in one fell swoop, buying Seattle Genetics, they basically revamped or recreated their entire cancer portfolio or pipeline with two approved drugs and a whole portfolio of the ADCs, which I mentioned earlier, which are the antibodies with the attached killing agents. Amgen, as usual, making big moves. M&A is always a trigger for rallies. Cash is overflowing, and we expect to see many more acquisitions during the year. Amgen particularly could be a big player. Stay tuned. Next slide. One I want to point to down at the bottom is that it's actually the goal of all pharma or biotech companies that have approved drugs is to run into a situation where you're selling so much drug you can't make enough of it. Novo Nordisk is now the largest European company based on their sales of their GLP-1 type 2 diabetes / obesity drugs. They recently spent $16.5 billion to buy basically more factories or manufacturing capacity as they cannot make enough of the GLP-1s, which are poised or predicted to be over $100 billion class, which would make it far and away the largest class of drugs ever. Next slide, please. Bull case for biotech is biotech remains the heart or the R&D arm of the pharmaceutical industry. Just looking at Amgen on the previous slide, 35 acquisitions. So the biotechs will always find homes or can be bought at premiums by the big bios and the big pharma. Biotech is part of the solution for COVID-19 and our future pandemic threats with diagnostics, drugs, and vaccines. Good drugs will be used and paid for. Leading neurologist quote, I would apply that specifically to the Alzheimer's space with biogenetics drug. Drug pricing concerns from the IRA are minimal and in fact have been benefit biotech as they are the ones that are innovators, and some of the major pressure on the IRA is reducing some of the intellectual property for some of the older drugs, so they need to go out and innovate or buy new drugs, and that's very good for biotech. Next slide, please. GLPs for obesity and NASH. As incredible as these drugs are, they have some significant side effects. Basically, the nausea almost never goes away, and particularly for some people, 50% of these people are probably not going to be able to stay on these drugs for a full 52 weeks. There's going to be lots of other drugs needed out there. There's been a lot of discussion of why these drugs are supposed to take over for NASH patients. NASH patients are different than type 2 diabetics and also the obesity market. I don't think the GLP-1s are going to be used much in the NASH space. So this makes a big deal for Madrigal's drug, resmetirom. It's a very safe pill with excellent data. It just had a positive PDUFA, a positive decision, and it is now on the market. Specifically, we're also look at the VKTX 2735, which is a GLP-1 / GIP dual agonist. And particularly, it looks like it has a much safer drug candidate with significantly less nausea. It has the potential to be best in class. And we're going to discuss some of their data here coming up. And next slide, please. So this is Viking Therapeutics. 2735, as you could see, has recently completed the phase 2. That is the sub-Q formulation that would compete directly with the current GLP-1s and the first dual agonist on the market. Complete wildcard and very interesting is their oral 2735, which has recently delivered phase 1 data. And so far, I'll discuss this a little more in the next slides. It looks extremely safe, and they're continuing to up the dose, and we're getting some additional data from the phase 1 before we even go into phase 2. In addition, Viking has 2809, which is very similar to Madrigal's drug, which is through phase 2. It has a potential upcoming catalyst, which is the Voyage phase 2B biopsy results in NASH. Those are due second quarter, so that's a near-term catalyst, and we're very excited for that. And next slide, please. This is a complicated slide, but the take-home message from this is that the GLP-1 activity is on the left and the GIP is on the right. And you can see that they're bringing oh, some multiple different routes of activity, and why we believe these are going to be the better drugs than just the GLP-1 alone. Interestingly, there's been a lot of discussion and potential excitement about Lilly's so-called triple G. It adds a third target, which is called glucagon. We are not excited about triple G or glucagon as a third or even second target. It looks like there's some negative cardiac effects. It's the exact opposite of what we want to see in a metabolic disorder drug. So we're not excited about the triple G, and we think Lilly's been also very selective about the data they've released there. So we're like the double G, and specifically we like what Viking doing with their compound, or compounds, as we have an oral and a sub-Q. Next slide, please. So 13-week data, basically 3 months. We showed basically at the highest dose up to 15% weight reduction. This is incredible data for 3 months, highly competitive with what's going on out there and the other drug development world. But importantly, and very important in our opinion, it was accompanied by some very good safety data. You can see up here 2735, really we think measures up very well with the other compounds in the space. You see our good friend triple G all the way to the right. As I said, we're going to discount a lot of that data as we don't think that's going to be real world, but at the probably more interested in what's going on in peptide, which the other Lilly drug, seeing that 2735, we expect to be very competitive, potentially get into that 22, 23% weight loss, but also with much a better safety. You can see that those are all much longer timelines. So we're excited to see the next data set from Viking on that of the sub-Q. Next slide, please. Takeaways from the 3-month study: 15% weight loss, promising to excellent tolerability, very mild drug events. This is just looks like a much easier drug to take and a much less side effects. These GI adverse events that do actually occur early and are resolvable. That's not, or that's a classic or a good drug profile as your body acclimates. Further evaluation of lipids and other chemistry, all very important in this space. We'll be following up at future medical meetings. Now we're going to transition to the phase 1 oral data. 28 days, it's just a month. We're able to show at the highest dose, what we got there, 5.3% weight change. Very, very interesting. The possibilities for what we could do with an oral dosing versus an injectable are huge. Recent estimates have an oral GLP-1 is getting 30% of that $100 billion market. In our opinion, the 2735 from Viking looks like it is the best in class also in oral. So we're really excited about the molecule and the compound here. In fact, the company hadn't planned to test this at higher doses. They expected to see some safety. They haven't. So at this point, we're going to higher doses and we're getting almost free data. So, excuse me, let's go stay on the previous slide. Yeah, so we saw a significant reduction versus placebo. Very happy with this data. We will be getting more oral data probably in the next month to 2 months. Next slide, please. And next slide, VK2809. Perfect, thank you. 2809 is their NASH compound. It is a pill just like the Madrigal compound. It's very interesting. It is getting or having broad effect in the metabolic health of the patient. Not only is it reducing or having a robust reduction in liver fat, we're seeing significant reduction in all the different plasma lipids, LDL, triglycerides, excuse me, LP little a, APOB, and APOC3. These are all important. So you're really showing a consistent liver fat reduction also in type 2 diabetic patients, also reduction in fibrosis. So this is a very good molecule, great safety slash tolerability, GI side effects. I mean, we see similar to placebo. That is about as good as it gets. We have 52-week biopsy data from the phase 2 trial. We expect that. Basically, that's a first half event. So that's coming anytime also. We're excited about that data. Next slide is we're going to transition to Celldex. So Celldex, the lead compound is Barzo or barzolvolimab. It's a unique mast cell depleting antibody. And what we're seeing to date is the potential for what we call a pipeline within a pill. It's actually a drug or injectable, so pipeline within a product. We've had very interesting proof of concept data where they presented great top line data in a couple of different severe autoimmune or itching diseases. Urticaria, CSU is a type of urticaria at the autoimmune conferences. We've also had follow-up data presented in late last year. To date, we've also had a strong cash position as the company recently raised after the positive phase 2 data, which we'll discuss here in a second. In February, they're sitting on over $800 million in cash as they're about to go into a broad and accelerated clinical development. Next slide, please. So why the company needs so money is that mast cells have been a key mediator within the entire autoimmune and allergic cascade. So we have a potential to work in dermatological or skin conditions, respiratory conditions such as asthma, which is inflammation of the lung, all other allergic conditions, ophthalmic and gastrointestinal. So it's not just working in one disease, but particularly when you get into the autoimmune space, people know of a drug called Humira from AbbVie. It is approved for over 15 different autoimmune indications. If you work in one inflammatory autoimmune disease, particularly when you get at a key intermediary, you have the potential to work in multiple different diseases. And this is why we're referencing the pipeline in a pill or a pipeline in the product. So having excellent progress here. So getting at mast cells with an antibody appears to be a potential home run, and potentially Barzo, we believe, is best in class potential. Next slide, please. I love this slide because we put it in all of 10 days ago, and it's already they updated it last week. So here are the 4 current indications: urticaria, the 2 ones I mentioned up front, chronic and cold. In addition, two other severe autoimmune itching diseases, but they added a 5th one just this last week on their conference call. We discussed that in this week's current issue: atopic dermatitis, potentially another billion-dollar opportunity, multiple billion-dollar. And in fact, pipeline and pill Dupixent has just been approved for that indication, and here we're following closely behind. So there's 4 here listed. They've 5. We didn't even have other things which were probably even bigger markets, things like asthma. That's why they have a huge cash position. Not one of these is partnered, or the company is 100% owns all the rights to their drugs and products. And with this many indications and potentially that many more to be targeted, this really makes them a potential acquisition candidate. The drug is about to go into registrational studies or trials, which will position them to get FDA approvals. Xolair is the drug we're referencing down here, which shows that it's working in Xolair failures. That's another very important potential, or helping them to the market. It's an excellent, well tolerated to date. We're going to start phase 3 studies in CSU second half of this year, or basically this summer. So we're really excited about getting into registration trials. And I think this is attracting a lot of eyes in different parts of the investment community and also within the medical space. Next slide, please. I love it when they have the check slides. So Barzo 0159, we checked off 2 of those slides earlier this week. So the bottom bullet point, second half 2024 new indication, they did that in May. So in the first half, I love it when the companies over deliver and under promise. So that's the atopic dermatitis. Let's see, initiation of the phase 2 PN trial. That is already was announced last week to have started. So they checked off 2 of these boxes. We expect all of the other boxes to check off cleanly throughout the year, and we're excited about that. In addition, the company has a next generation oncology target that we're interested in. So the bispecific 585. We're going to get some of our first dosing done there. The PD-1 we're very excited about because that's Opdivo or Keytruda. Those are the basically cancer cure PD-L1 drugs or PD-1s. Combining that with another drug might be able to make it even better, but in addition would provide intellectual property protection, which Keytruda and Opdivo and the 5 or 6 other competitors obviously don't have. So that could be very important. So we're very excited about Celldex and VKTX, as we have discussed. But obviously, it's more than just buying them and putting them away. These are companies you need to do a lot of work and follow going forward, and that's where we come in. Next slide, please. So we encourage you to basically catch the next wave with biotech investing. Then the next slide, please. The newsletter is $399 a year. We have many long time subscribers, as Lynn could attest to. We also really kind of have a similar purpose as AAII does. There's a lot, or the majority of our subscribers are individual and investors, and our goal is to continue to provide information and educate just like AAII. In addition, it's a very interesting sector. We believe biotech is going to deliver on its promise over the next 25 years. Demographics demand it, as all of us are aging and use healthcare, particularly pharmaceuticals, in some way, shape, or form. Technology and innovation will create more and more opportunities. COVID-19 cemented the critical need for biotech to battle future infectious threats. Combined, we have over 70 years of investment experience. Next slide, please. Why you need to subscribe to MTSL? Portfolio performance. Number 1, we're going to pick stock winners and make you money in biotech. Provide great updates for the biosector analysis, breaking news, white papers, clinical trial updates, and access to experienced investment team. We encourage all of you to subscribe to MTSL. Come to our website. $399 we think is a great value. I want to thank you all for coming here to today's presentation. Hopefully you guys can facilitate or get some questions here for us, and I'll do my best to provide a few answers on some of the biotech companies. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Type in questions and we'll answer them. John, would you comment briefly on what the impact of the computing power of AI is going to provide to the biotech industry?
Great question, Lynn. And so doing a lot of thinking about that, and particularly since we sit here in literally Silicon Valley, or the center of everything. At this point, I'm not sure where we're going to get an advantage. We're going to do work and look at it. There's been an awful lot of computer power and technology applied to biotechnology, and who's going to make, probably going to get some things that'll help us, work on maybe cancers and understanding them more by their molecular signatures opposed to body part or, not cancer of the liver, but what type of cancer in the liver. But I also think back to the Human Genome Project, and that took a huge amount of computing power and people were very excited about it, but it provided a lot of genomic information, but that really didn't have a real clear connection to drug development and that you need drug targets. So maybe we'll dig some up out of AI, but at this point there's an awful lot of machine learning already applied, and I think it'll help us get to better patient populations or more selective, maybe some better drugs. But at the end of the day, it's still going to take 5 or 10 years to run these clinical trials and run them through the preclinic, make sure they're safe in animals, then in the humans. So there'll be some, but our eyes are open though, absolutely, Lynn. And we'll look for opportunity, but no impact near term from what we can see.
A question in chat is, what do you think of GILD stock?
Gilead, great company, obviously a Bay Area, pioneer here in HIV. Don't see anything there that would get, us too excited. They're a little out of our sweet spot. Is there a, mature company now? We'll occasionally go after something like that. We recommended Genentech back in the day when they were a big company, but they'd really run into FDA problems, and so it was really a contrarian. Gilead we like, we'd appreciate what they do, but don't see that as being a classic biotech, maybe part of a pharma portfolio.
Next question was CRSP.
CRISPR, broad group of stocks, making some slow progress, getting to the first products or drug or therapies on the market. At least two strong competitors in the space. CRISPR, we're probably looking at also there has been a lot of controversy around the intellectual property. Looking at second and third generation CRISPR technologies, maybe might have better IP protection. But we're very excited in the bigger picture, though, that they are a very good and a unique tool. They're used throughout biotech and in research and diagnostics. But we haven't found any CRISPR drugs or specific companies that we could get our arms around completely. But we do really like the gene and cell therapy space.
Do you recommend a buy and hold strategy or trading at opportune points?
Specifically, it's buy and hold. There will be some trades. Madrigal had an incredible move years ago where it went from 17 to 320 maybe, even when we just almost had to sell a good chunk to rebalance the portfolio. But in general, the main advice in biotech is buy and hold, but we're also by doing lots of research and experience, we can be very good contrarians or buy these at sometimes very attractive or lower prices, and that really makes it easier to hold through some of the ups and downs of the biotech investing.
Pfizer recently bought Seagen, and with nothing else, aren't there better stock picks?
For Pfizer?
Yeah.
So Pfizer, that's a great question. So they could have, a lot of times at that price tag, they did some math on the two approved drugs, and it's probably sounds like I agree. It's more of a safer investment by Pfizer. So they didn't really roll the dice on that one. We have a recommendation that I mentioned, BCYC. They literally have what looks like Padcev is the second drug from Seattle Genetics that's just getting approved. It looks they have a best-in-class or new and improved Padcev, specifically much better safety profile. So we like Bicycle in this space with the ADCs or antibody conjugates.
Are there certain types or venues of overheated hype that prompt you to consider a contrarian trading approach or to buy put right calls?
Absolutely. It's been a couple, 5, maybe 7 years, but we shorted all three of the CRISPR stocks, CRISPR, NTLA, and I forget the symbol on the other. when they had a pretty significant hype. There, at that point, it looked like there might even be a true scientific health problem, is that there were mutagenesis or unwanted mutations that could be cancerous being caused by the CRISPR offsite. That was a successful, I think, 40 or 50% gain. So that was a straight short, but that was a, yeah, straight contrarian. That was overhyped, and we will certainly keep our eyes out for those going forward. Those are more one-offs, but yes, we will keep our eyes out and we can profit from those also.
What percentage of your portfolio would you recommend in biotech?
Well, depends on, some of the other bigger variables. So I would have it be probably a third to half of my technology slash growth portion of my portfolio. I like to think of biotechs as growth stocks, but also with a strong technology bent.
Perspective on mRNA in general and Moderna pipeline?
Good question. Looks like they got a recent delay. That's not a huge deal. They're trying to, that's RSV, get into some other vaccine space. Also, they may have what's been kind of a holy grail, a cancer vaccine that might work with Keytruda. That would take them to the next level. Not so sure about that. And also the mRNA technology longer term, we haven't seen all the safety data for all these vaccines they've given. If nothing else, they were so specific. They didn't work well when we had mutations or drift. So if I'm not 100% sold there. We'd look for other technologies. And interestingly, Novavax got a big validation with a big deal with Sanofi. So that's a vote against mRNA, maybe vaccine technology, and back to some of the more traditional subunit or traditional vaccines that we've been using before the mRNA.
I believe that's all the questions that are currently in chat.
Oh, well, I thank everyone for coming to today's presentation. Looking forward, you guys, I hope you enjoy the next speaker. Certainly, I am looking forward to it. And then it looks like it's a nice sunny day here in the Bay Area. So maybe some gardening, farmers market. Everyone have a great Saturday, and thank you for coming. Lynn, in particular, thank you for your invitation, and I look forward to speaking and working with the group going forward.
Thank you very much, John. We've enjoyed the presentation.